And welcome back to the JKR Podcast. Today I've got Walter Ford, 2022 MLB draft prospect, Alabama baseball commit. He's on the show. Walter, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing all right. So for those who don't know you, Walter, what would you like them to know?
Well, of course, like you said, I'm a draft prospect, committed to Alabama. Love to play the game of baseball and, just kind of having fun and then just being successful at it.
Yeah. So before we dig into your baseball career, looks like you got a haircut. Is that true?
Yes, I completely got a haircut, shaved it off on the sides. I went.
What for?
Well, I think it was kind of one of those things that was going in my senior year, and I would decide, I'm going to change it up a little bit for the one final ride.
Yeah. So you had that flow going for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I think it was about 2 years in growth or 1 year. So
what was the reason? You just did it just for the heck of it? You didn't really have any? Yeah.
Just for why not? I'll grow back.
Yeah. All right. So digging into your career though, I saw you went to 2 high schools. So that's true, correct? I was listening to some interview about it. So,
yeah, so I started off and one of those things. Dad got a job offer up in Bama. Of course, Hoover's a great program, great coach, Coach Mosley up there. So it was one of those things. We moved into Hoover and kind of got in Hoover, and then ended up making a great state run my sophomore year. And then it was one of those things that when I decided to age up, I actually had to kind of go back to Florida for schooling reasons. And it was one of those things. We're like, well, we were at pace when we began my freshman year before COVID. And we were kind of like, well, it's kind of home for us. It was a no-brainer to kind of go back. So it was one of those things, kind of finishing out my senior year there.
Okay, so you played your freshman year, and then your sophomore year was when you switched to a different high school, correct?
Yes, I think I played. Of course, there's like 3 weeks in the freshman year because of COVID, but it was one of those things. I played 3 games with Pace, moved in the middle of it, and then played like 1 game with Hoover, and then COVID shut everything down, and then I continued my sophomore year with Hoover.
Okay, so that COVID year, you guys are already playing ball.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we only had 3 weeks in it.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot different than here in Indiana. Indiana, we had our first practice and we got shut down, but
yeah, I kept us going for as long as possible, and then it was like one of those things. School shut down, so they kind of had to shut down baseball with it.
Yeah. What were some of those big differences you saw in between the 2 high schools, like just in terms of coaching wise and just overall?
I think it's crazy. The big change is Alabama in general. It's just like light years ahead of Florida, like from high school sports and anywhere from football to baseball. But it was one of those things. It was a big change. It was kind of one of those things. It's like trying to compare the two. It's like Florida is like your regular high school, you would feel like, and then Alabama high school is kind of like D1, like kind of just the funding it gets, and then kind of just like the effort that's put into it. It was one of those things. I went from, I think, 2 coaches to 5 when I moved to.
That's crazy to think about, because here living up north, I feel like I always hear nothing about Florida baseball, Florida football. It's crazy to think Alabama's that much far ahead.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's like just kind of Florida's behind. Of course, they still got great programs and like that, but it's like the funding's there. The funding's different. It's like Hoover, we had like indoor facilities and everything like that. In Florida, we were lucky to get a baseball field. It felt like.
Wow. So, when you're in different, when you change states, did you change travel ball teams at all?
No, I kind of bounced around travel ball teams growing up. It was one of those things I wanted to play every week. So, no week. So, I jump and bouncing around. But I'd have to say my main travel ball team I always played with was East Cobb. And of course, that really didn't change. Actually, I kind of moved closer to them. So, it was one of those things throughout the years. East Cobb was kind of like the main I always went back to. So it was kind of one of those things I actually moved closer when I moved to Alabama.
Yeah. So East Cobb, that's located in Atlanta, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what all different teams have you played for?
Let's see. Of course, I guess the main ones I can jump out of is, of course, I played with East Cobb. I think I played like 1 or 2 with Kangaroo Court. Let's see. What else am I trying to think of? I played with the Sticks this year, the Arkansas Sticks. Played a couple tournaments with them. A handful of local teams. Of course, I name them off, and no one would stand them. But I'm trying to think like the renowned like kind of teams. I can't really think, but I know there was a couple there. Gosh, it's been a long career.
I'm sure. So when you're playing for a team like the Arkansas Sticks that they're based so far away from you, do you really all you're doing is just playing with them on the weekends? You don't have any practice with them at all, right?
I don't know. I kind of practice on my own or practice with the local team is one of those things. If I wanted to get team reps, of course I'd kind of work in with the academy kind of down the street or anything like that. But kind of just jumping in and playing with them for any like the East Cobbs or the Arkansas Six and anything like that.
Yeah. So are most of your tournaments, are they down in the South, like Southeast Atlanta area, Alabama, or do you ever go to like California, other places like that?
A couple of showcases took me to California and kind of up in there. But if it was kind of with a team, I think I ventured out to. I think the farthest I ventured to was probably Cary, the USA complex up in Cary.
Okay.
And you got your Tampa tournaments and your Miami, Fort Myers, all the South Florida. It'd probably have to be South Florida or Cary were the two big ones I traveled to for the team.
Yeah. Have you ever played against the Indiana Bulls with Max Clark?
I have not. Of course,
No?
I played in the same. Just didn't get match up with him. But I have played with Max Clark throughout like showcases and things.
Okay, so never like on a team or just like the showcases where it's like individual stuff?
It was actually actually Matt USA. So it was like kind of like it was like a showcase, but it was like we played on teams. That was one of the things like if it were like I think we ended up playing together and then we played against each other as well. But nothing like really kind of. I never really played the Indiana Bulls with a certain team.
Yeah.
I've never matched up with them.
Yeah. So in the 2023 class that you were before you reclassified, who were some of those top guys that you faced?
Let's see. Of course, I faced Walker Jenkins is one, Blake Mitchell, Max Clark definitely. Let's see who else. I faced Braden Holcomb as well. Of course, I grew up with him back when we were 12U. He was kind of one of the local teams. Me and him actually played on like the same local team, and of course he ended up moving to South Florida. Of course, that kind of changed everything. But let's see what else. I'm trying to think. I can't think of it very much.
Yeah. So let's say you had a live AB with Max Clark right now. How would you go about it? What would you start him off with?
I remember they actually had a live AB. It was actually one of my last times ever throwing a 23s. Max Clark actually was the lead off for it. I started off with 2 sliders, and of course I went hard in on the fastball. So I probably tried to do something similar. Of course, because the game plan worked. It was one of those things. Kind of started him off aggressively with the slider. It wasn't like I was trying to get around him with the slider. I mean, that's kind of how I pitch. I kind of go really aggressive, regardless of if it's the best hitter in the class or not. I'm going to go right at you. So of course, I went right at Max Clark.
Yeah,
and kind of worked for the best. I think it was either a check swing or that it was like a ball that like should have been a strike. I can't remember. But of course, I think when me and him battled, and of course I got him to kind of get jammed on one.
Yeah. So now that we're talking about the draft reclass, what exactly went into that decision to reclass from 2023 to 2022?
So it was one of those things. It was crazy. I wasn't even expecting to be in the situation at the beginning of the summer this year. But it was one of those things. I went throughout all the upper class events, and of course I dominated on the field, and then also I was able to kind of be able to be responsible enough off the field. And then of course I kind of sat down with my family, and then we kind of talked about it. And because I kind of went through all the events this year as an underclass, and I dominated them very well. It was kind of one of those things. My parents kind of told me I had the option to age up, and of course we had a couple other guys like Coach Mosley back at Hoover, and then of course some of the USA coaches from Team USA kind of like gave us the pros and cons, and they kind of told us, hey, you probably might need to age up. So it's kind of one of those things. I kind of sat down as a family, kind of talked about it, and of course my mom, the thing she kind of told me was if I wanted to age up, I'd have to get a diploma. I wasn't going to GED out. So it was one of those things I decided with everything put together, kind of decided, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to age up. It was a big decision, but an easy decision. I want to go play at the next level, the fastest way possible. And I kind of saw that as the best way. So it was one of those things. I mean, going to Alabama a year early or getting into the draft a year early, that's something I was really looking forward to.
Yeah. So in terms of class-wise, you leaving school a year early, is your class schedule going to be pretty loaded this year?
It was loaded. It was kind of one of those things when I first started. It was ridiculous the amount of work I was doing because it was one of those things I wanted to finish up the 11th grade and then trying to get on track for the 12th grade. So like that first month and a half, I was doing like 8 hours of schoolwork. But now it's kind of back to normal. I'm kind of on schedule to graduate as a 12th grader.
Okay. Yeah. So with that draft reclass, was there a lot of conversation with teams before you reclassified, or did a lot of that happen after you reclassified to this year's draft?
It happened as right after we classified. It wasn't really anything. Of course, there were rumors that was like, we heard rumors from a couple teams that was like from like middleman. I was like, oh, if he ages up, we'll take him this year, kind of things like that. But we never really had any direct contact with the team before I had.
So now that you're having that direct contact with some teams, what are some of those conversations like with those teams?
Really, it's the big thing is just if I'm mature enough or not to handle it, and of course talking to a lot of teams, it kind of seems that I am kind of mature enough to handle it at a pro level. Because I mean, it's just one of those things. If you're going to give some money to a 16-year-old, you want to make sure he's going to be able to handle himself on the field and off the field. So it's kind of one of those things that kind of just want to get to know me a little bit, kind of understand my personality, and make sure I'm not just the average 16-year-old mentality wise, make sure I'm able to kind of handle myself while I'm away from my parents.
Yeah. Well, you'll be 17 during the draft, right?
Yes, I actually just turned 17 a couple days ago.
Okay. I know earlier you mentioned you dominated this past summer. So can you take us through this summer? Because I was following you a little bit. I saw all these different events you were in, but could you kind of take us through the summer and how you kind of dominated everything?
Yeah, so I think it started off. It was actually kind of a blessing. It was one of those things. I first started off with the East Coast Pro tryout. So this was like the tryout to get to East Coast Pro. I actually got invited to that because, of course, we knew Zuli from Alabama, and this was his brother. So he kind of invited us out. He told us, look, we'll come get his feet wet, kind of enjoy the tryout, and kind of get to know a couple scouts and stuff like that, but nothing too crazy. He kind of said it was a 22 cater event, so no 23s would be on it. He said, but he still wanted to come try out, get his feet wet. And he said, he kind of said that if anyone got hurt, like any 22s got hurt or kind of dropped out, that I'd be the first call, which is actually kind of what happened like a couple days right before the event started. So we got a call, and I was in Fort Myers, and got a call that I had to be back up there in about a day or two for the event. And it was one of those things. I went there on a limb, and I ended up doing really well, dominated very well. And then that kind of spiraled and kind of snowballed into getting invited to area codes, and then of course the USA stuff, and then kind of just the big events like that. So it's kind of one of those things that I started off on an accidental call to going about, I think, 1 week of a break throughout the rest of the summer. But it was one of those things that I enjoyed it. I mean, it was like one of those things that I finished up East Coast Pro, and then like literally the last day of it finishing, I had to fly out to Cary for USA, and then flew out from Cary to Nashville to California for area codes, and then California back to Atlanta, and then down to South Florida for more USA.
Okay. So now that your travel ball career's over, you're going to be either going to college or going to the draft. What are some of your favorite experiences just growing up in the travel ball? What are like when people talk about travel ball, what's like the first thing that hits your mind?
Probably definitely I'd have to say the USA, just Team USA. I mean, that's a big accomplishment for, I guess, really anyone. It was one of those things that was amazing to kind of put USA across my chest and play for them. Definitely, I'd have to say that my biggest travel ball, I guess, ever accomplishment was being able to play for them. And a couple others is definitely kind of just the tournaments growing up and all the road trips. The road trip is what really sticks out to me. Because I was blessed enough to have my dad, who was actually self-employed. So it was one of those things he can make up his own hours. So he could put in the work and then be able to kind of have us get off for the weekend and come take me. So it was one of those things I always had my whole family with me on the road trips, and they were definitely fun. And we made a lot of memories on the road and in hotel rooms together. So it was one of those things. I remember all the butt chewings I got after bad games, but they stuck with me, and I love them now.
Know what you mean about the butt chewings, but do you have any siblings that would go with you at all, or is it just your parents?
Well, my little sister would actually come with me for some games.
Okay.
Of course, sister, she's only 2 years younger than me. But she would usually tag along for most of them. But if we were going up to Atlanta, she'd usually just stay home or something like that, or stay with my grandma. But it was usually it was me, my sister, my mom, and dad.
Okay. So you say your dad's self-employed. What exactly does he do?
He actually makes jerseys, kind of full sub jerseys, and kind of does things in that area. So he'll do jerseys for like teams and academies and things like that. So it was one of those things to come and spend the weekend with me. He'd kind of rush up and finish up on all the orders he had that week, and then he'd just take the week off and then come watch me play some baseball.
Yeah. So growing up, did you get the chance to work with him a little bit at all?
Yeah, I did. It was one of those things. That was kind of my first job, I guess, was pressing shirts for him.
Yeah.
And I guess now he would design them, and then he would get the prints and stuff like that, and then I'd throw the prints on the shirt. That was my first job, making like 50 cents a shirt. It racked up, but it was some tough work.
Yeah. So just moving into your actual baseball career, we've been talking about kind of like what you've done throughout your career, but you're a dominant two-way player right now. but when you do go pro or play at the collegiate level, what do you see yourself doing?
At the collegiate level, I definitely see, of course, Bama's kind of talked into me wanting to be like kind of like a third baseman, closer, kind of Friday night starter. So kind of what I'm doing now in high school. Then, of course, for pro ball or anything like that, kind of in there, I really don't know what the future holds. But it's one of those things. I'm going to continue to be an athlete this year, and then kind of still just enjoy playing the game every day, and then going out there swinging it, fielding it, throwing it, and it's kind of one of those things. I'll kind of just let the future take over, and then whatever the future kind of decides is what I'll do.
Yeah.
Of course, I kind of want to be an athlete, and then whatever happens, kind of happens.
Yeah. So let's go through your pitching repertoire a little bit. What exactly do you throw? What are your velocities? What's your favorite pitch to throw? All that.
So I throw fastball, slider, changeup, and two seam. But it was one of those things. My two favorite pitches to throw are the fastball, slider. Of course, those are my more dominant pitches. So it was one of those things that I don't really have to throw the changeup two seam very often. But the fastball is topped out at 97, and the slider is kind of topped out at 87. So it's one of those things are two pretty fast for the respective pitches. But of course, my slider has some pretty good movement. I love throwing it a lot. Of course, the fastball will probably be my favorite pitch. Just to kind of blow one past someone is kind of just a feeling. It's a great feeling. Definitely, I'm not gonna to blow a 95 plus by someone isn't a great feeling. It definitely is. But it's kind of one of those things that I kind of just like on the fastball slider, really.
Okay. So are there any pitches that you'd like to add in the future?
Probably, but I mean, it's one of those things. I kind of want to master all four of my pitches before I kind of move on to another one. Of course, the changeup and two seam are kind of already there. I'm pretty close to mastering the changeup. Of course, the two seam kind of just it's there. It's got great movement, got great speed. It's kind of just one of those things I kind of get used. Just got to get used to it.
Yeah.
But the change there, I'm kind of really excited to throw it this high school season. But I think definitely gonna master those four, and then maybe add on another one if necessary.
Yeah. So when did you add in that changeup and that two seam?
I kind of always had the two pitches, but it's kind of one of those things. They're just bullpen pitches, really. Kind of over the summer and throughout my kind of career, I guess I've really had good domination with the two fastball sliders. So it's one of those things. I've always had the pitches, but I've just never really need to use them. So it's kind of one of those things. I kind of just went out there and dominated with two pitches, and it was like, well, I don't really need to throw the changeup, but I kind of need it just to make sure I'll have it, always have it.
Yeah, especially in pro ball and college ball. Like in high school now, you could probably just throw 97, whiz it by everybody. But
one of those things. Those two pitches are gonna play a lot in the future.
Yeah. So how would you describe yourself as a hitter?
I would have to say probably just kind of crafty. Kind of easy, can make adjustments pretty easy. Of course, I got some pretty good power for my size. I'm not gonna say it's crazy power, but I mean for what I am, it's pretty good. Got some pretty good power. I can put it all over the field. I actually got I got better backside power than I do pull side. So it's one of those things. I'll just pepper them over the right center fence. Of course, I'll pull one every once in a while. I only go 400 feet. But definitely, of course, I'm trying to hit line drives, hit doubles. Of course, it's one of those things. Home runs are just miss hit doubles for me. So it's kind of really not my game plan when I go to the play. I'm kind of thinking about hitting line drives, kind of over shortstop, second baseman's head, and kind of let the gaps play. But definitely, kind of just I like to be a little aggressive. It's one of those things. I'm not the best in two strike count. So it's one of those things. I see a pitch early on in the count. I'm jump on it definitely.
Yeah. So what's kind of your thought process as you're on the on deck circle, or even when you're watching the pitcher warm up? Like, what's kind of like going through your mind, and what's just your thought process?
So it's usually what I'm going through my mind right now. I'm kind of thinking like what the situation is if I get up. Of course, like what inning is it? How many outs? Who's on base? Kind of things like that. What's my job if I get to the plate? And then of course, whatever my job may be, that's what I'm thinking about. I gotta do. Of course, I like at the plate. I'm a big team guy. So it's one of those things. If I got to take a team at bat, I will. Lay down a bunt, hit a ground ball, kind of things like that. Get a sac fly, score a runner, kind of things like that. But it's kind of one of those things. If it's not, it's my idea. Just need a base runner, got to get on. It's kind of one of those things. I'm gonna go up and I'm gonna try to get on. Of course, if there's some pitches in my wheelhouse, I'm gonna try to drive and get a double, get a home run, things like that. But if it gets down to two strikes, kind of just trying to put a ball in play. So it's one of those things. You can't get on base if you're not swinging. So it's kind of one of those things that I go into protect mode and just try to put something in play. Kind of things like that.
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest things you want to focus on? You got one more season left before you move on to the next level. What are some of the biggest things you want to focus on pitching wise and hitting wise?
Definitely, I just want to get stronger, bigger. Kind of age up a little bit. I mean, it's kind of one of those things. I just kind of want to dominate still, pitching and hitting wise. Of course, I want to have fun with it, and of course, I want to go and try to win a state championship for my senior year, my last year. That'd be pretty awesome. But definitely, I think of focusing pitching wise and hitting wise. I'm just really trying to get better out of each day. Kind of just take it day by day, really. Just trying to get better by each day.
Yeah. So when do you guys start playing? Because it has to be pretty soon, right? Like start practicing.
Well, I think tryouts are January the 17th, and then our first games are February the 24th.
Okay, yeah, you guys are way ahead of Indiana. We don't start playing until like the first week of April. Well, back when I was in high school, but
that's about when high school us.
Yeah. So let's dig in a little bit to your recruiting process going to Bama. When did you start getting noticed by some D1 teams?
It was kind of one of those things it was a snowball effect. It was like one talked to me and they kind of poured in. It was actually the summer going into my freshman year. So it was kind of the 8th grade, 9th grade summer right in between. It was kind of one of those things that kind of one D1 team talked to me, and it was kind of one of those things that kind of just flooded in, really.
Yeah. Were there any small schools talking to you before those D1 schools started contacting you, or really not at all?
Yeah, it was a couple local teams, kind of just like there was actually a D2 team that was pretty close, and then that we'd actually known the head coach for a while now, and then of course a couple of the junior colleges around town. I kind of reached out or had early, and they kind of just said, "Hey, look, he's got bigger things planned for him, but if something happens, injury or anything like that, we'll take him, no doubt." Kind of just saying.
Yeah. So after you had those initial conversations with some of those teams, like how long was it until you received your first offer?
Well, my first offer, it probably would have been about a month, 2 months after that prior. Of course, some of those things, whenever those small little schools had offered, of course, I'd been talking to a handful of teams, like D1 teams, and it's kind of one of the things that they about after. Gosh, I can't remember what the event was called, but I forgot what it's called. But it was like right after that event, I did really well, and it was kind of just the offers kind of sort of pouring in.
Yeah. It was Alabama, one of those offers, or I kind of read something that Alabama was like they offered you a little bit later on. Is that pretty spot on?
Yeah. Alabama was actually probably the last ones to offer. It was weird. I had it crazy. I think it was probably like about a handful, about 4 or 5 SEC teams that kind of offered, and then a couple ACC that kind of had offer as well. And it was kind of one of those things. Alabama was kind of late last to offer because I was kind of waiting on them. Because it was funny, they were the first ones to talk to me, and then the last ones to offer.
Yeah,
it's kind of the story I tell people.
Yeah. So before receiving that Bama offer, were there any schools that you were kind of leaning towards, or was it?
I think definitely my big one that I was leaning was Ole Miss probably. But it kind of just wasn't home really. I kind of really just wanted to wait on that Bama. It was one of those things. It was like I just kind of have been in Tuscaloosa all my life, grew up in it, and it was kind of one of those things. I love Coach Bo. Great coach, great person in general. It was one of those things I really won't want to play for anyone else. So whenever he offered, I definitely took it.
Yeah. So when exactly did you receive that offer?
I can't remember. It was actually on the way home from a tournament. I remember it. Speaking of road trips, we were actually stopped at a gas station at like 11 o'clock at night. It was one of those things I committed in a gas station parking lot. With nowhere, Bama. I remember it because we were like on the way home. We had stopped to get gas, and then we knew Coach Bo. He was like, "I'm about to call in like 30 minutes." So we had pulled over, stopped, got in the parking lot. Of course, they had offered right there and there, so I took it right in the gas station parking lot in the middle of the night.
And you committed right then and there, like you knew that was what you wanted.
Yeah, no thought process behind it. Whenever I got the offer, it was kind of one of those things. It was what we wanted. It was enough, definitely, and it was one of those things. It was enough. I love Coach Bo and everything like that. I mean, it was a no-brainer, definitely.
So how far exactly do you live from the campus?
Right now I live about 40 minutes away.
Okay, so do you try and make it to some basketball, football games throughout the year?
Oh yeah, I do definitely. I went to I think 5 football games this year. Definitely didn't really. Of course, it was one of those things. Once I kind of aged up, I was able to get the free tickets from just being a student, or not a student, but a student athlete kind of recruit there. So I was able to get the free recruit tickets.
Yeah.
When I was the age finally. So it was one of those things I took advantage. So if I was here in town on the weekend and I was free, I went.
Yeah. Is that just for football, or do you watch some Bama basketball too?
I watch Bama basketball as well. I'm actually going to go to a couple games coming up soon. I know we play like Baylor and then Kentucky Valley back to back. So it's one of those things I've definitely.
Yeah. So growing up, who were some of your favorite players watching at Alabama?
Let's see. I remember Mari Cooper and Julio Jones. And then let's see, AJ McCarron, the quarterback. I was like my first quarterback I remember watching in Bama. Of course, you can't forget about Derrick Henry and Mark Ingram. Gosh, there's been so many. Let's see, Fitzpatrick was one, and I had throw a defense player in there, and of course you got Diggs from a couple years ago. Gosh, it's been a lot. It's been a lot of players that have come through Bama in the past couple of years. Yeah. Oh yeah, they heard name off all the draft picks and all the good players.
That'd be crazy. I mean, they send 5 in the first round every year. It seems like.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be cool to kind of just watch it growing up, and then kind of still continue to kind of watch it, and then it's so cool that those kind of the funniest things I remember is like the first game I watched after I'd been committed. It was kind of just it was a different feeling. Like some of those things, like watching Alabama go out and dominate. It's like, wow, I'm committed to go play there. It's just, of course, it's not football.
Yeah.
Concept.
Do you play football at all, like in high school?
I do not. I'm a white scrawny kid. Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things. Of course, I'll go out and play. I'll go play like backyard football and things like that. But I was never good enough to go out and play real football.
Well, basketball. You're a pretty tall guy.
Oof, nah, it's worse than football. No? I got no hands.
You got a shot at all?
I got a what?
You got a shot?
Oh, shot? Yeah. 50.
Yeah. So do you follow any of those guys into the pro from Bama? Do you follow any of those guys in the pros at all?
I do a little bit. Yeah, of course I'll keep up with them and things like that. If I see like I guess an ESPN or not ESPN, but ESPN, NFL kind of things like that. If I see it, I'll look for like a Alabama player that kind of got some.
Yeah. So moving on to some of your off the field stuff. So let's say you played 20 years from now, your career's over. Is there anything that you'd like to do off the field? Baseball's over.
Coaching has already kind of interested me. Of course, I over the summer I kind of picked up doing like lessons for little kids. It was kind of really fun. Of course, I had a couple like just one-on-one lessons, and then of course I coached a little bit for a couple all-star teams, kind of just local. So it was one of those things that really interested me. I had a great time with it. I love working out with the kids. Of course, I wanted to make sure I always brought energy to the practices, and of course I always did, and the kids definitely loved it. It was one of those things that I enjoyed doing it. So it's one of those things. I think if my career ever ended, I think I'd probably look into doing something like that.
Okay. So once you do finally graduate, make it to Bama, are you excited for some of those NIL opportunities, or have you not really looked into that much at all?
I'd have to say, of course, they're there, but I haven't really looked into them too well. It's kind of one of those things. Once I get there, it'd be a problem I'd worry about when I get there.
Yeah.
Of course, Coach Bo has talked about it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we'll get you set up quick." But it's kind of one of those things I haven't really thought about it too much.
Yeah. So moving on to the draft this year, obviously there's a high possibility you get drafted. Probably I'd say 100%. Either first or second round. What are going to be some of those determining factors between signing with that team or going to campus at Alabama?
Of course, it's like you never really want to say it's a factor, but it kind of always is money. Definitely, of course, it's like one of those things you got to be able to live a little bit. Like whenever make sure you can buy some food after practice, things like that. But it's kind of one of those things. Probably, I guess, definitely just kind of money is kind of one of the big factors, and kind of just where I'm at in my life. Kind of once that gets there, kind of like what are the pros and cons? Of course, kind of you don't really know what I'll have in the future. Of course, I mean, but in half a year from now, of course, you never really know what's going to happen. Of course, it's kind of one of those things. It's like, is it going to outweigh an education and a great time at Alabama?
Yeah. So before that reclassification, when did you kind of notice that playing pro ball or playing at the collegiate level, like when did you notice that was going to be a pretty high likability?
Of course, I'd always known I was going to be able to kind of play pro ball or play college ball kind of growing up, kind of once I kind of got into my freshman year. But it was kind of one of those things I really wasn't expecting to be able to do it this year up until like the very end of the summer. It was kind of one of those things, the thought or the idea of kind of aging up kind of really blindsided me. And it was kind of one of those things, once that idea and kind of thought had got in my head, it was one of those things I wouldn't leave. So until I kind of faced the decision head on.
Yeah. So when did you first start seeing your names kind of mentioned among the MLB draft, like in mock drafts, anything like that? When did you start seeing that?
It was funny. One actually came out like literally like the week after I'd aged up. and it was one of those things. Of course, I was in it. I think I was like, of course, I was like 50 or 200 or something like that. But I mean, I was in it, and I thought it was pretty cool. Of course, I've been, I've been everywhere, up and down on the draft, the mock drafts. Of course, I really don't try to look at it too much. Of course, I kind of just look at it and see it's cool to see my name in it. But of
Yeah.
course, I'm not going in depth with them.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm looking at my list of questions. I'm trying to find out which one fits next. But so what kind of goes through your head when you see your name in those articles, or you're just seeing stuff on Twitter? What kind of goes through your head?
Of course, I mean, I'm kind of like, I guess, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that's actually like my name. It's kind of just like, wow, they're talking about me. So it's one of those things that kind of like just I guess, a pride thing, really. Just kind of see your name. It's kind of really cool. Just be like, put in all the work I've put in, and of course the position I'm in now, it kind of makes you reflect a little bit and kind of like I'm doing something right. But it's definitely really cool to look at, and of course it's just like I got more work to put in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like one of those things. Even though it's a mock draft, to look at it like I'm not number one on the draft board, so it's like one of those things. I got I mean, if I'm, of course, I think a MLB like had me at 36, so it's like one of those things. I got 35 guys to beat. So once I get in the pro ball, I got a lot of guys to beat.
So
but always get better.
Yeah. So being 17 years old, do you think that affects your draft status at all? Just in terms of where you're going?
Yeah, I think it does, definitely. Of course, I think it helps out a little bit, and I'm so young, and of course, I'm so young, and I'm at the ability I am already. So it's kind of one of those things. Teams kind of look at it like, okay, he's this young and he's this mature, and he's got this already underneath him. He's got a lot of growth left. Because I mean, the draft is a lot about projectability. Of course, teams aren't looking at a guy to draft and then play or pitch for him or play for him in the next week. They kind of like look at him to see how well they're going to project out, and of course how soon they're going to project out. So it's like one of those things. If I'm already at where I am now, it's so young. It's kind of one of those things. They kind of project to see where I could be, where I could be, like where I am in like 3 years. It's kind of the name of the game. So it's kind of one of those things. Luckily, I'm a little bit more projectable, kind of the younger I am. So it's kind of one of those things that kind of works out in my favor a little bit.
Yeah. So as we're talking about the draft, I kind of want to move on to your draft advisor. Obviously, like I said before we started recording, I want to be an MLB agent at some point. So I kind of like get to know like the player side of things, what the players like. So when did advisors kind of start reaching out to you?
It was actually funny. Tripper was actually one of the first ones to reach out, and it was one of those things. We weren't expecting much of it, just because it was when we actually reached out about right around the time I had committed. So it was one of those things. He kind of reached out, and it was one of those things that we kind of like looked at it, and we were like, this can't be like real. It's kind of just, we thought it was gonna be someone that kind of just like iffy, not very much, kind of not, just kind of someone that kind of wanted and kind of get our money really. So it was one of those things we weren't expecting much when we went into it. And of course, after we got into it, we realized that it was a big name. And at the time, I think he was with Sosnick, so of course that was a little bit bigger organization than where he is now. Just for legal cases, it was kind of weird. So what had happened? I'll dive into it a little bit. So what had happened? Sosnick had a domestic violence case, and it was one of those things. Whenever that happened, Sosnick actually had to break up. And then Tripper and then a couple other guys from Sosnick had went and formed Apex. So of course Apex is a relatively new kind of, I guess, It's a brand, but kind of just of course the guys in it have been experienced. So it was one of those things. We still went right through. We had been with Tripper for like a month when this happened. It was one of those things that we're debating on if to stay with him or not. Of course, thankfully we did, and of course things have been great since. But it was one of those things when we went with Tripper. I think it's just he's got a lot of other players and of course and things like that, a lot bigger than me now. And of course it was one of those things he kind of really made us feel family, like right at the beginning. It was one of those things, of course, nowadays been him for like I think 2.5 years, and it's one of those things. I mean, he kind of just feels like family now, of course. So I'll pick up the phone, I can text him anytime and he'll text me like right back. So it's kind of one of those things, just being able to feel like it isn't a business, is kind of like one of the big things for me. It really doesn't feel like he's working for me. It really feels like he's just a friend. Definitely, I really like it about him. It's kind of down to earth feel. It doesn't really feel like I'm a client to him. So it's kind of one of those things that he just feels like a friend. Feels like he can always help out, and of course, he's helped out a lot kind of over the years.
Yeah. So when you're going through that process, how many advisors kind of reached out to you?
It was kind of funny because they kind of reached out, kind of just throughout the years. It wasn't like a downpour like it was for my college. It was kind of just a steady increase throughout the years. And of course, someone would find me in person at tournaments, and some others would send a text. But it's kind of ever since I've kind of been on the spot, it's kind of just I've had a constant kind of wave of agents kind of come through and ask. But of course, we'd always kind of just said we've already been with Tripper, just because I mean we kind of went with him kind of early on.
Yeah. So what exactly was it that what's your advisor's name?
Tripper.
Trooper?
Yeah, Tripper Johnson.
Okay. So what exactly made him stand out among some of the other people?
Definitely just like what I said earlier, just kind of the down to earth guy. Really doesn't feel like an ambulance chaser. Definitely kind of just he kind of takes the I guess the business side out of it, and of course it really feels kind of home. Kind of just really feels a lot like family. Definitely kind of just a guy I could really talk to. So it's kind of one of those things. Just kind of all that combined, definitely felt like he had the best interest in me or for me and him, and it was kind of one of those things he definitely does. So definitely just all those things combined, it was an easy pick for him to be my.
Yeah. So is he located kind of close to you?
No, he's in South Florida. But it's one of those things we usually see him. We usually see him in person about 3 times a summer or spring.
Okay. Well, Walter, I think that's all the questions I got for you. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Big first weekend here. Got you, Max Clark. I got TJ committed to IU. So I'm just pumped to have all you guys on the show. I'm going to be following your career from now on. So I wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. Coming here and talk baseball a little bit, talk a little bit about myself. I definitely enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. All right. You have a good night.
You too.